guys, it's Joey, and this is a requested video about connecting to goddess energy, particularly aimed at beginners. So I sat and had a think about this because I'm sure there is plenty of information out there already about the very sort of basic correspondences and things of that nature, and I really wanted to talk about connecting to goddess energy as a whole, because I think this is something which is largely left out of the beginner books. At least it was when I was learning from the beginner books, and it doesn't actually help. And that is thinking of God and goddess in very separate terminologies, completely separating gender in terms of divinity. And a lot of the books that I read, you know, you have your God candle and your goddess candle because it's simple, because it's easier, and you get further down the path and then you start to realise that it's not that simple, it's not that basic, and you have to sort of unlearn everything you learned in the first place. So what I'm actually getting at is to first understand goddess energy. I think we have to understand that God and goddess energy, male and female energy in terms of the divine, this being again of course my own thoughts and feelings on the matter, flow through everything. So a lot of pagans will talk about how nature is my church, and that's because they feel closer to God, goddess, divinity at home in nature. There is something other about being out in nature and trees and the seasons and the cycles. That's what being a pagan or a witch is largely about, embracing the energies of nature, the shifting of the seasons and the cycles and of the world around us, and tapping into that otherness that is inherent within nature. And that sort of ties us into things like divination and crystals and things of all that nature. Personally, I think the easiest way of saying it is that, you know, there is an energy, a divinity, a spark of something that flows through everything and everyone. And that energy is male and female. I don't think you should separate them completely in the beginning like a lot of places teach you to do. I realise it's probably a simpler concept to put forward. However, I think that's not giving people an awful lot of credit in what they can understand. There are some that believe in just the goddess, and you know, that's their path and whatnot. However, for most pagans, there is the inherent nature that there is male and female within everything in nature, and that's why soul, gender, religion never made any sense to me. The world was created thus, and there is male and female in everything, in every flower, in every tree, in every animal, in us, and we're just an animal really. You know, there is male and female, or there is male and female components. So why would divinity not reflect that? That doesn't make any sense to me, and therefore that is the first concept that I really want to talk about. Even for beginners, I know it's a bit abstract, and I started working with God and goddess in the abstract from the very beginning, and it stood me in a much better stead, personally, I feel, than trying to connect to a particular deity, male and female, right from the get-go. And this is something that if you were asking me, if you asked me for my advice, I would say work with male and female divinity in the abstract for a good period of time before you seek out any matron or patron. And then there's going to be, of course, the following, but Joey, you follow a matron goddess. You work with a goddess? And it's like, yes, I do, but she is male and female within herself. The first time she ever showed up, it was male. And I was confused. And I just feel very strongly that the energies of male and female, of God and goddess, are present in everything. And that is a sort of key way into how to connect to God and goddess energy, realizing that you sort of embrace them in balance and that they flow through everything, including you. Concepts of gender are really problematic. I really have issue with some of the gender associations because I really don't agree with a lot of it. I think a lot of it is our sort of societal perception of what is male and female. So there are a lot of correspondences out there that are generally given as male and female, even in the terms of paganism. So you have given that the moon is innately female and the sun is innately male, and that the qualities attributed to them are considered male and female. So you have your solar energies, which are dynamic, creative, solar, warmth, energy, action, fire, fight, that sort of thing. And then your feminine, supposedly, energies for the moon are considered to be mysterious and shifting and changing and enlightening and softer and things of that nature. However, I really don't like these sorts of correspondences because in the Celtic pantheon there are as many solar goddesses as there are solar gods, and there are lunar gods as well as lunar goddesses. And therefore the male and female energy is present within both, just as the male and female energy is present within us and is present within deity. And people are probably going to regret asking me, but never mind. So the first thing you can do to connect to God and goddess energy, and I would do it together, connecting with divine energy, is understanding the parts of yourself which are God and goddess energy within you, male and female energy within you. I would personally question all of the attributed things because I obviously work with a goddess of war. Therefore, the aggressive warlike stance which is often given to patriarchal male gods, I don't agree with that personally, because I work with a goddess who is all of these things. You see, she is all of those solar attributes, she's all of those lunar attributes, and quite more besides. To be honest with you, connecting to God and goddess energy is probably a lifetime commitment. It's something where you get fragments of information, and I use the sea analogy quite frequently when people ask me about this, and I say it's like light rippling over the waves of the ocean. You get sort of flashes of illumination, you see the sparkles, you see the way the waves move, and you start to get an understanding for that, but there is so much depth beyond that which we may or may not, and more likely than not we probably will never fully understand deity. And that's the first thing that I think is worth really driving home, is that we never fully understand deity. It's bigger than us. It's perhaps outside of our comprehension. We're not going to understand it fully because it's deity, because it's divinity, because it's spirit, because it's more than we are as human beings, and we are just having a human experience and understanding things through the scope of being human. That being said, I don't think it's necessary to simplify things so far down like a lot of the very beginner books often do, and it used to frustrate me no end that's sort of all the information that's really available, and anything else you have to kind of work by yourself to try and figure out, and it can be a very difficult process. If it helps to have male and female representations, then by all means engage in that. You can even go with male and female figure candles, just because that's a human way of understanding male and female in terms of anatomy and sort of chemical makeup, I guess, and sort of physical differences, which might help you to connect to God and Goddess energy, as long as you are realizing that they are parts of a whole. You can't really recognize one without the other. In my opinion, there are people who are going to disagree with that. I personally feel there is a balance to all things. The balance is not necessarily, balanced scale. It might tip either way, but there is always a balance between these things. And male and female is one such balance, and it's something we have to figure out what our preconceived notions of what male and female are, which is a really good place maybe that you can start doing some written list work, if you like. I often recommend list work when people are confused, and you write down what you consider to be male attributes and what you consider to be female attributes, and you write your list, and then you sit there and you deconstruct all of that. You go through it and go, okay, why do I think that this is a feminine attribute? Why do I think that this is a male attribute? And then come up with arguments against and for both, because you are, deconstructing, you're picking it apart, you're making sure you're not placing preconceived societal sort of learned ideas onto what male and female are. Because in the search for deity, connecting to deity, you have to kind of shed that sort of ego that those things come with, and it's very difficult to do in the beginning. But let me take an example. So quite frequently, carrying family ties is often considered a feminine thing, like a mother role, and being caring and nurturing is often considered in modern society to be a largely feminine role, which is a huge injustice to single fathers, and an injustice to men, if anyway, for good, decent fathers. Obviously, we're going to talk in idealistic terms, because obviously there are going to be people who are not caring and nurturing fathers. I know all about it. So when you really look at that, that's not really a fair representation. Who says the father can't be loving and nurturing and bring up a healthy, well-adjusted child by himself? And yet society has this notion that that caring, nurturing thing is female. And on the on the flip side, you have even now, like this breadwinner mechanic, that the male breadwinner, and he goes out and he makes the money and he should make more money, and it's an injustice in society that still exists, whereby men are paid more for the same job, and there is that injustice within those things, and that because there is that imbalance there, that sort of societal pushed idea of what masculine and feminine energies are, we have to deconstruct that and say, that has no place in terms of spirit, in terms of spirituality and deity. Spirituality and deity are older than our modern notions of what masculine and feminine are. And that's another reason I don't like these sort of, this colour is male, this colour is female, this lunar body is female, this lunar body is male, and it's like, well, that's sort of, I don't even know where it's come about. I think it's just like this modern oversimplification of energy. And I don't think that even newbies need to be talked down to just because it's new. I don't think people coming into the craft and things necessarily need to be treated as if then they can't get their heads around the idea that energy flows through everything and that energy has male and female components. I don't really understand the idea that people can't think for themselves, even as newbies. Like, I came to the pagan path, the witchy path, because I saw these things in these other spiritual paths. They didn't sit right with me, like male-centric gods and no feminine presence. It was wrong to me. It didn't feel right to me. And I was like, why would we have a father and not a mother? And why would we have a mother and not a father? It doesn't make any sense to me in terms of spirituality. So I came seeking and looking and trying to discern and you know, inward seeking, out seeking about spirituality and deity. Now, in terms of connecting to gods and goddesses, the first thing I'm going to say is if you're really beginning, I would seriously advise working in the abstract, even if you then go on to work with a particular god or goddess, because then you have an overarching understanding, even though it's obviously a fragment of understanding like we were talking earlier, but you have a generalized understanding of masculine and feminine energies, and the best way you can do that is by meditating on it, about going through what it means to be male and female and deconstructing it a little bit, and what sits comfortably as being masculine and feminine. I think the idea that we are completely and utterly separate is something which is very society driven, and generally speaking we're just two halves of a whole, and I think that all of the things that are usually present within men are present within female, and it's just about upbringing and sort of conditioning to a level. You know, in terms of the ancient Celts, the women were more feared warriors than the men. There's a historian whose name completely escapes me who wrote that down, that if the females took to battle, then the enemies would quake. And you have female war goddesses in terms of Celts. There are actually a lot of male deities in the Celtic pantheon which are associated with poetry and music and bards and things of that nature. And that sort of creative energy. And so, you know, it's just an example of how different societies perceive gender and how it's not helpful to us today trying to understand God and goddess energy in terms of a narrow scope. And I think that's something that really needs to be removed from when you are trying to connect with God and goddess energy. That being said, certain things may or may not be helpful. So if you had, like I said earlier, you know, the candles of a male and female anatomy, or you could just go with, if you absolutely had to, go with two colours of candle. Now, if it were me, I would probably suggest you go for a cream and a white, and you pick randomly which one you think is more male or female, just on feeling, and then you carve a little symbol for male on one, you carve a little symbol for female on the other, and then you light them. Certain herbs have been given male and female attributes, certain oils have been given male and female attributes, so maybe you could just take two exactly the same coloured candles and anoint them with different oils. Again, that's something that I'm not going to sit here and tell you correspondences about, you know, serious seeking of truth. The onus is on you to engage. So I can give you what I think are my pertinent, that's my ego talking, give you my opinions anyway, and what you do with them is then up to you. Meditation is probably the best way, going out into nature is another, and feeling the energies out, trying to sense those energies about masculine and feminine. I understand that the idea of these correspondences is to make it simple, but again, I really don't think that's necessary, and we don't need to be making stupid witches and stupid pagans. And then you have to overcome that what you've learnt in the beginning, you have to overcome that as you start to progress deeper down that path, as you start to see that the male and female is present within everything. And it's glorious as well. There's no shame in either gender, in either goddess or god, in deity, in spirit, in nature. And that's something which I embrace fully within the witchy path as well, because I refuse the notion that any gender should accept shame because of their gender. It's another reason I rejected certain other religious ideology, because I honestly think there needs to be a balance between gender rather than the supremacy of one versus the other. And I don't believe that that would be present in deity, in spirit, in God and Goddess. I believe that those two things cycle around each other and complete each other as a whole for the purpose of creativity, of reproduction, of life. So I guess what I'm saying is that you need to sort of firstly deconstruct your ideas of what gender is. Sit and write it out and talk about it and think about it and make notes about it. You know, if it may well take a good long time to actually overcome it, because even in terms of how we sort herbs and, you know, herbs and flowers and things, they're all categorized into boxes, given astrological and gender correspondences, and then magical properties which are found to be true. And often people, when they get further along their path, they discover they may connect to an energy of a particular herb, flower or plant for something outside of what the book teaches, outside of those general correspondences. It's like me and cornflower from the other day. I connect it very deeply with crone energy, which is not something I've ever read about, but it's something that I believe wholeheartedly from my path, from my way of learning. It has that energy correspondence in my experience, in my brain, if you like, in my experience of energy. And that's something that's really important, is that everybody's experience of male and female, of God and Goddess energy is going to be unique to them. And it's unique based upon your perceptions, your experiences, your history, your memories, and of course your way of relating to male and female, which is why I talked about deconstructing it a little bit and putting aside some of the value judgments which we pick up on. I'm not saying that you cannot go with the simplified correspondences if, you know, you feel you need to. I just don't think that it's productive down the line. I think it's teaching a very, very basic idea of male and female being separate. And I don't think it is separate. I think we have all of those energies within ourselves, and we have all of those energies within nature, and we have all of those energies within deity. I think nature is probably the best, easiest and most forthright way of connecting with any divine energy. It's something witches talk about, it's something pagans talk about, and however you want to classify it. It's just boxing again, isn't it? Categorization. But I honestly feel that the idea of we go to nature to heal is because we're connecting to spirits, we're connecting to deity, we're allowing that energy to flow through us. And when we go and do that, it allows us, it opens us up to something greater than ourselves. And it's something as simple as documenting how you feel when you place your hand on a tree, against the bark of a certain tree. It's documenting how you feel, or noting how you feel inwardly when you watch the leaves rustle as the wind moves through them, or how a sunset affects you, or how you feel when that cold nip of air comes in and you know the evening is coming, or the overwhelming sense of awe when you're looking up at the night sky. These things that connect you to something more that you can't really fully explain or understand, but it's just a feeling, and that feeling will be different for each individual. And for me, it's just like an opening, a lifting, almost an embracing of deity, like being lifted up to be more. And I honestly think that nature is probably the best way to go for anybody seeking to search with God and Goddess energy. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, if I was too vague, then pop them down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Many blessings.